The hardest person in the world to love is the one who loves the hardest. Have you ever watched someone drop everything for the people they care about? Remember every birthday, carry everyone through their worst weeks, pour love out like it costs them nothing, and then freeze the second you try to give any of it back? That isn't a quirk, it's a specific, measurable wiring. And once you see the mechanism underneath it, you will never read someone's distance the same way again. In the 1980s, a psychologist named Swann found that people don't actually want to be loved well. They want to be seen, the way they already see themselves. So, if some buried part of you is convinced you're hard to love, then being adored doesn't land as warmth. It lands as a mistake about to be corrected. And that quiet belief could be pushing away the exact person who would have stayed. By the end of this, you'll understand precisely why receiving love can feel more dangerous than giving it. And the one small thing that finally teaches a guarded nervous system it's safe to keep what it's been given. Start with the asymmetry, because almost no one names it. You are generous, you show up, you remember the small things, you carry people through their worst weeks, you love in a way that costs you something real. So why does it feel almost unbearable when someone tries to do the same for you? Picture this. It's an ordinary evening. Someone you care about looks at you and says, with no agenda, "I've got you. You don't have to earn this." And instead of warmth, you feel a strange heat climb up your neck. You want to deflect, make a joke, do them a favor so the scales tip back your way. Because being on the receiving end doesn't feel like love. It feels like exposure. Here's the part most people miss. Giving love and receiving love are not the same skill, and they don't come from the same place in you. One is something you do. The other is something you have to allow. And for a certain kind of person, doing has always been safe, but allowing never once was. But here's what nobody tells you about where this starts. It rarely begins with cruelty. It begins with a deal. Somewhere early, you learned that love was real, but it came with a meter running. You were adored when you achieved, held when you were easy, praised when you were useful, quiet, impressive, low maintenance. And underneath it all, you absorbed a rule no one ever said out loud. Love is something you pay for. In 2004, the psychologist Assor and his colleagues studied something they named parental conditional regard. Parents giving more affection when a child met their expectations, and pulling it back when the child didn't. Those children performed, they complied, but they grew up feeling the love was never quite theirs. It belonged to their performance. Their worth rose and fell like a stock price. Read that again. The love wasn't unconditional. It was a wage. So now picture that child, 20 years later, standing in front of someone offering love for free. No meter, no conditions, no invoice. Their whole nervous system rejects it as a glitch. Because if love is something you earn, then love you didn't earn must be a trick, a mistake, or a debt you'll be billed for later. Free love doesn't feel safe. It feels suspicious. And here's where it stops being a feeling and becomes a mechanism. In the 1980s, a psychologist named Swann found something that sounds insane until you've lived it. People don't actually want to be seen positively. They want to be seen accurately. We are wired to seek out information that confirms what we already believe about ourselves, even when that belief is brutal. He called it self-verification. If deep down, you believe you're too much, or not enough, or fundamentally hard to love, then someone treating you as precious creates a kind of internal static, a mismatch. Their version of you and your version of you cannot both be true. And the mind hates that contradiction more than it hates the pain. So it resolves it the fast way, by quietly rejecting the person who sees you well. You pick a fight, you find the flaw, you decide they're naive, or settling, or about to wake up. In his studies, people with negative self-views actually felt more understood by partners who thought poorly of them, and pulled away from the ones who adored them. Sit with that. You don't sabotage love because you hate yourself. You sabotage it because being loved feels like being misread. But there's a piece of this almost no one talks about, and it lives in your happiest moments, not your worst. The researcher Brené Brown spent years interviewing people about joy and found something disturbing. For many of us, joy is not a relief. It's a warning. The instant something is too good, the person too kind, the moment too tender, the love landing too well, a trapdoor opens and you start rehearsing how you'll lose it. Brown calls this foreboding joy. You stand in a perfect moment and immediately dress rehearse the tragedy. You picture the breakup mid-embrace. You brace for the phone call. You hold a little back so the fall won't break you. Why would a mind do that? Because if you never fully let it in, you can never be fully shattered when it leaves. Loving someone is a risk you control. Being loved is a risk that controls you. So you take the joy in sips, never the whole glass. And here's the cruel irony. The bracing doesn't protect you from the loss. It just robs you of the love, while you still have it. You grieve it in advance, and you call that being realistic. Here's where it gets strange. Because underneath the fear sits a quieter motive. Control. When you are the one loving hard, you are in the driver's seat. You decide how much to give. You stay useful, needed, a step ahead. You cannot be abandoned by someone who depends on you. But the moment you let someone love you, you hand them the power to leave. In the early 2000s, the psychologist Sandra Murray mapped this as a risk regulation system. Every close bond, she found, forces a trade-off between the wish to feel connected and the need to guard against rejection. People who doubt their own worth resolve that trade-off the same way, automatically. They shrink how much they let themselves depend on the other person to soften a blow they're certain is coming. They read their partner's love through a cracked lens, discount it, and pull back first. Not because the love isn't there, because trusting it feels like handing a stranger the keys to the one thing that could destroy you. Staying in control feels like safety. It's really just a slower kind of starving. And your body enforces all of this before your mind gets a vote. Tenderness, for someone with this history, doesn't register as comfort. It registers as threat. The same brain region that scans for danger, the amygdala, lights up when closeness arrives. Because closeness is exactly where the old wounds were made. So the gentlest gesture trips the oldest alarm. Someone holds your gaze a second too long, says something true about you, and your chest tightens. Your eyes drop. You need to leave the room. That isn't coldness. That's a smoke detector, shrieking in a house that once burned. And here's the paradox that should stop you cold. The people hardest to love well are very often the ones who needed it most and got it least. They are not the ones who feel too little. They built the wall precisely because they felt everything. They learned, early and deep, that the safest way to survive love was to be the one who gives it, and never ever the one who needs it back. So what actually changes it? Not a grand gesture. Grand gestures set off the alarm. What rewires this is something almost boringly small. It's letting one safe person's care land. In a dose, your nervous system can survive. You don't tear down the wall. You leave one brick out, and you tolerate how exposed that feels. And you notice that you didn't die. Then another. The work isn't learning to give more. You were always good at that. The work is staying in the room when someone is kind to you, when every cell is screaming to deflect, and letting it be true for 3 more seconds than is comfortable. That's the whole rebellion. Because every time you let love in, and the catastrophe doesn't come, your brain quietly updates a file it's been guarding since childhood. The one that says, receiving is dangerous. It learns, against everything it was taught, that maybe you don't have to earn it. Maybe you don't have to brace for it. Maybe, this time, you can just keep it. You were never bad at love. You were only ever bad at believing it could be for you too. And if you saw yourself anywhere in this, there's one more thing you need to understand. Because the same childhood that taught you to fear being loved also wired you to be drawn to the exact people who confirm that fear. The next video is about why you keep choosing the ones who can't fully love you back. It might be the most important one yet. Subscribe and watch that one next.